On January 8, 2020, a civilian passenger flight, Ukrainian International Flight 752, left Tehran Airport in Iran en route to Kiev, Ukraine. Shortly after takeoff, the flight was shot down by the Iranian National Guard, killing all 176 people on board, including 55 Canadian citizens and 30 Canadian permanent residents. Iran initially denied responsibility for the attack, but after several days admitted that the Revolutionary Guard had shot 2 missiles at the plane, they say by mistake, claiming they believed it was an American cruise missile. Canada has dismissed this explanation. Canada's foreign minister at the time, François-Philippe Champagne, said, "All the facts and circumstances point to more than just human error, so certainly we will continue to pursue vigorously the investigation." However, the families of victims have not been satisfied by Canada's response. For example, there is currently a court battle over the review into Canada's stalled investigation into the shooting down of the plane. Mr. Shaheen Moghadam, whose wife and 10-year-old son died after the flight was shot down, is seeking a judicial review into why the RCMP and National Security Intelligence Review Agency have refused to launch an investigation. Here today to discuss that case and other issues related to the flight are Mr. Moghadam's lawyer, Asher Honickman, and we will then be joined by Kaveh Shahrooz. Thank you so much for joining me today, Asher. Let's start with your client's story. What can you tell me about Mr. Moghadam and his family and what happened to them?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's very nice to be back on your show, Christine. I wish it were under better circumstances with this case. It's just tragic, doesn't even begin to describe it. So Mr. Moghadam really lost the 2 people who matter most to him in his life, his wife, Shakiba, and his son, Rostin. They were both in Iran over Christmas break to visit family that was back in Iran. They were on their way back home to be reunited with him. The last time he saw them was about a month before they died. He was in touch with them often while they were in Iran. They were coming home to see him. They were 2 of the many victims and many of the Canadian victims that were killed in this just brutal attack. And Mr. Moghadam, since then, that was 3.5 years ago, has fought tirelessly to finally get justice for his family and for the other family member victims, for the other victims and their family members.
And I think part of what justice looks like for him, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, is a proper investigation into what happened by Canada, including an RCMP investigation. Now, the RCMP wrote a letter to families of victims saying that they would not be launching an investigation. Did they say why?
Right. So this goes back now to July 2021. So at that time, there was no war in Ukraine yet. And the basis at that time for why the RCMP was not going to investigate was because Ukraine had started its own criminal investigation. Now, there's nothing preventing the RCMP from investigating the matter concurrently with Ukraine, sharing findings, etc. It was always the case that many more Canadians than Ukrainians died in the attack. So even at the outset, there was no absolute reason why Canada could not investigate this itself. But then whatever basis there was for Ukraine to take the lead surely then ended in February of last year, in 2022, when Russia invaded that country. So to the extent that Ukraine was ever the proper country to spearhead the investigation, that is very clearly no longer the case.
And has the government said anything about that, about this massive change in circumstances where I assume the Ukrainian government probably has other priorities right now? Has the RCMP said anything about that? Has the National Security Intelligence Review Agency said anything about that, or the government, any politicians?
No. What's happened is that after the RCMP refused to investigate, Mr. Moghadam, through his previous counsel, started a complaint against the RCMP. That complaint was then referred to the NSIRA, the National Security and Intelligence Review Agency. The NSIRA began its investigation into why the RCMP didn't investigate, but then almost immediately partially suspended that investigation, saying that there was some other investigation that would be severely hindered if it continued investigating Mr. Moghadam's complaint.